واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين رحمة للعالمين طه وياسين بالقاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين ورحمة الله على محبيهم ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتبارك في كتابه الحكيم وفرقانه المجيد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانيك هو الأبتر. One salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, please. Respected sisters and brothers, my youngsters, my elders, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be back in your presence and share a few thoughts on these days of the Ayyam-e Fatimiyya that will culminate in marking the shahadat of Hazrat Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahi alayha, the daughter of the Holy Prophet of Islam, the mother of 11 A'immah, 11 Imams alayhimus salam, peace be upon them all. And one of the shortest surahs of the Quran is the one that I began today's discussion with. It is known as Surah Al-Kawthar, the surah or the chapter of abundance. And there are a number of commentators who have tried to or who have allocated the name Kawthar into various aspects. And one of the things that we find is that being one of the shortest surahs, it is one of the first surahs that our youngsters like to memorize. You know, everybody wants a little bit of a shortcut. Everybody wants to do whatever is easy, right? And so the teachers usually encourage or start with these short surah of the Quran Majid after Al-Fatiha. Al-Fatiha has 7 verses. And then the next verses, next surahs that the people or the teachers or our parents try to get us to memorize are the shorter surahs, Surah Asr, Surah Kawthar, Surah Fil, and basically those that are going to be easy, that keep us in our what we call the comfort zone. You're with me, right? You guys have had a long week, haven't you? School, studies, some of you have had exams, right? Sheikh, I think exams are going on, or some essays or reports, right? So you really probably don't want to listen to me right now, but you're stuck. You're here, and I'm here, and so we're going to be sharing a few thoughts together, and then I can release you. Let you go, inshallah. Sounds good? Let's have one loud salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad as part of the barakah for today. My dear youths, you guys are capable of a much better salawat than that, please. Ali Muhammad wa'ajjal. Thank you, that's much better, because that gives me a little bit of energy and enthusiasm after a 4-hour drive to say a few words and inshallah impart at least a part of the message of Ahlul Bayt. That's what we're here for. So when we talk about these small surahs of the Holy Quran, and the impact that they have is usually very big. Because even the small surah of the Quran, the small surahs of the Holy Quran have got a very big impact. Because every word in the Holy Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any adulteration and without any change or amendment whatsoever. Unlike other faiths who try to constantly update their religious scriptures, we are not authorized to do that. It is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is the word of Allah till the day of Qiyamah. So one of these surahs, in Juz Amma, in the final chapter or section of the Holy Quran, is Surah Kawthar. And according to the commentators of both the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah as well as the Shia, this is a very direct and a clear reference to none other than Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahi alayha bint Rasulullah. A clear reference. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. O Muhammad, it is addressing the Holy Prophet of Islam. It is addressing the Holy Messenger. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making it very clear that there is a lot of emphasis that is being directed in these verses that are to come. All of you have done some research and study into the Quran. Of course, I know you've told and taught us about many things here, right? And you know that when you're reading the Quran, every verse of the Quran is important. We heard a beautiful recitation today, just now before I started. All of the verses of the Holy Quran are important. are imperative. And the Quran itself mentions وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةً لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. That this Quran that we have sent down, in it there is a rahmah and there is a shifa, there is a cure and there is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, for those who believe. Not for everybody. لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. You see, the Quran is a shifa, is a rahmah, is a guidance, is a very powerful tool, is got cures for unbelievable, innumerable, countless illnesses, both spiritual as well as physical. The Quran is saying it. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةً. It is a shifa, there's a cure in it. And the Quran is also saying, and rahmah, there is a mercy in it as well. But the condition, the prerequisite, you know, when you take a university course, many of you are in university or college or about to go into university or college or about to go into secondary, post-secondary education, and you get a list, you get all these documents that tell you, okay, you can take this course, you can take that course, you can take this class, you can take that class. And for many of these classes, many of these courses, they tell you that the prerequisite is da-da-da. The prerequisite is so-and-so. So you have to take that course first before you can take that advanced course. Right? You're with me. At least those of you who are in senior post-secondary education will understand what we're saying. That you need to take a prerequisite, you need to do something, you need to ascertain a certain level of education in order to go to the next level or in order to take that particular class. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty Creator, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, is telling us that if you want all of these benefits, if you want the Holy Quran to be your guide, to be your rahmah, to be your shifa, to be all of this, لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, you have to take the prerequisite, and that is to be a believer. You have to believe in it. And then the Quran will open up countless doors to you. وَلِلظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. For the disbeliever, for the oppressors, for the evildoers, there is nothing but loss in it. So even if they read the Quran, even if they read the meanings of the Quran, if you are a zalim, if you're a disbeliever, if you're an evildoer, it will do nothing but put you deeper and deeper into a pit fire, into a khasara, into a loss. The same Quran for the believers becomes something very treasurable. And for the disbelievers, for those who are the oppressors and evildoers, the same Quran becomes a loss. And I often give an example to my students. I said that, one of the things that we see in this dunya as well, similar to that. And I may have said this here as well, so forgive me if I have repeated anything. But if you look at our own world, do we have a similar example whereby one item, one thing, can be harmful for somebody and beneficial for somebody else? Do we have any examples of that? Well, sorry? Jazakallah. Well, that's that. You're very clear. Jazakallah khair. Ashkurkum. Technology can be really harmful for some people, but it's beneficial, but that depends. It's like a knife. Thank you. A knife can help you cut your steak or your chicken, or it can hurt other people. And I don't want to go into that detail right now because I'm sure that we are reading and watching enough news with what is happening. And by the way, I do not shy away from any of these topics. So inshallah, we will be addressing everything that in the life of Hazrat Fatima Al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha. But one of the things we find is that I often give an example because I'm a diabetic. And so, when I was younger, I used to love having my cup of tea. I've had Arabic tea, I've had Iranian tea, I've had Iraqi tea, I've had all tea. Some of my Iraqi friends, they put more sugar than tea in there, right? I don't know if that's the case here or not. So if you guys give me tea afterwards, I'll know how you have your sugar. Some people put sugar in the tea, some people put tea in sugar, right? And so you can see that if I'm a diabetic now, when they ask me, Sheikh, you want tea? You want sugar in your tea? No, just hold off on the sugar. Why? Because for me, once upon a time, that sugar was a necessity. I needed sugar in my tea. I needed sugar in my coffee in order to drink it, in order to make it palatable. Now, the same sugar will increase my sugar level. I'll have to take more medicine. I might have to increase my insulin dose. The same sugar harms me in my way, for me, and for you guys, it might be something you need. Like I needed it before when I was younger. So anyway, so the examples are there in front of us. So Allah Ta'ala is reminding us, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةً وَلِلْظَالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, for the believers it is this, وَلِلظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارَ, for the disbelievers, for the evildoers. The word is very clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it known. So now Allah ta'ala is guiding us into an area whereby the Quran, this particular surah that I started with, is saying, Inna a'tayna kal kawthar. We have given you. But it's not just starting with we have. Inna. And those of you who have studied the Quran and Majid, those of you who are, readers and regular reciters of the Holy Quran, who have studied the Holy Quran, who have an interest in understanding the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will realize one thing, that whenever you find inna, inni, innama, the alif with the noon and the shadda on the noon, there is an extra emphasis that Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal is placing on that verse. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu is putting a little extra emphasis. Inna. It's not just a'tayna kal kawthar. Inna a'tayna kal kawthar. Inna ma yuridu Allah. Inna ma amruhu idha arada shay'an. So there is a lot of emphasis Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to put on not only all the verses, but there are certain verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants a little extra attention from all of us. He says, we have given you Kawthar, O Muhammad. We have given you abundance. We have given you a lot. Now, if you look at the terminology here, and you have to understand one thing in the Arabian Peninsula at the time. In the Arabian Peninsula, people didn't just, nowadays, you see the average Canadian family, they will have one child usually. Statistically, the average Canadian family, if they're going to have children, that's another if then, they'll have one child. Because they're looking at statistics, they're looking at some of the financial demographic information, and they're realizing that, to bring up one child from 0 to 18 costs, $150,000, and I could rather have that $150,000 to enjoy and then spend on myself. And so they're having less children. And if you look at even in Canada today, many of the immigrant families, immigrants who have come to this country, they're having more children than Canadians. And that's why they're saying that in the next 30 to 40 years, there will be a higher percentage or a higher number of non-Canadians or non-white Canadians than there will be white Canadians. Percentage-wise, it's increasing. What does that all mean? That means that the children are, for example, an immigrant family might have 2 children, maybe 3 children. That's about the limit. In the old days, in the Arabian Peninsula, they used to have 10, 15, 20 children. And why would they have so many children? The idea was twofold. Number one was that there was a certain pride amongst themselves to have children. The more children, the merrier. The more, the better. And there was always an emphasis on having male children because the male would, number one, be able to work on the fields, on the farms, and the businesses, and make sure that they would carry on the family name and the family tradition. And so they would actually want to have more children, and you know the history about what they would do to girls, so I don't want to go into the depth or the details of that. But the emphasis was always on having males and having lots of them. So, you've got 5 kids working on the field, 5 kids working on 5 boys working in the business, 5 kids, out on the trade caravans, and everybody would be working and bringing you even more income. So the bottom line becomes very clear. And having more boys was also a prestige status symbol. It was a symbol of one's own social status. So when these abus, these old guys would get together, they would have interesting conversations. They would have conversations that I've got 10 kids, I've got 8 kids, I've got 15 kids, I've got 20 boys, 3 girls. I've got 15 boys, 2 girls. This is the kind of the gist of the conversation. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. And I hope I have all of your attention, right? Just for the few minutes that I'll be speaking, inshallah, right? One salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, please. Islam came as a unique way of life to change a lot of the status quo and to change a lot of the thinking and the mentality of the people. Until today, this is the same goal of Islam. The goal has not changed. Keep that in mind. The goal of Islam is to correct the mental incorrect thinking and bring us to a correct thinking level. You understand that? And this is one of the reasons why so many materialistic communities, Western-leaning communities, those who don't understand spirituality and those who don't understand the metaphysic importance of a sublime message that has a deep-rooted spiritual essence to it, they don't understand it. That why does Islam want to change our thinking? Why does Islam challenge the status quo? The status quo, if it is incorrect, Islam will challenge it. And it will rectify it. You see, Islam didn't do this in the way that many of the Orientalists and Western writers have said. There's a saying in some of the academic circles, Islam spread by the sword. They want to try and basically discourage people from learning about Islam, coming close to Islam, by using terminology like this, that Islam spread by the sword, it was a violent religion. And there were some mistakes made by many Muslims at the early part of Islam. I'm not going to deny that. That's why I always differentiate between Muslim history and Islamic history. Do you understand the difference? Thank you, Sheikh. One is Muslim history, and we don't agree with everything that is in Muslim history. Not every Muslim after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was correct. You see, Islamic history, on the other hand, is completely different. Islamic history is what was authentically taught by Muhammad and Ali Muhammad alayhi wassalam, peace be upon them all. And so there's a slight differentiation that we have to make between Muslim history and Islamic history. And in Islamic history, you don't find any of this violence. At the beginning of Islam, at the very beginning of Islam, when the people had accepted the message of the Holy Prophet, what did the Prophet say? Qulu la ilaha illallah tuflihu. Say la ilaha illallah, he will succeed. Remember one thing, at that beginning of Islam, in those early days, there was no salah, there was no saum for the people. For the Prophet there was. But there was no salah, there was no saum, there was no jihad, there was no hajj, there was no khums, there was no zakat, there was none of that. It was just the belief and the aqidah on the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the messengership of the Holy Prophet, and believing in Yawm al-Qiyamah. And even then, remember one thing, if you look at those 13 years in Makkah, correct me if I'm wrong, please. In those 13 years of Makkah, there was no issue of fighting against anybody. Islam was always and always has been a very peaceful religion. Just believe it. And also, if you want to believe, believe it. If you don't want to believe, that's up to you. The job of the Prophet, وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ, our job is to deliver the message. We're not going to grab people by the throat and say, La ilaha illallah, grab them by the chest and grab them by the shirt and say, La ilaha illallah. No, because the Quran says, La ikraha fid din, qad tabayyana rushdu. A little louder. Min al-ghayb. The clear path is known. The two directions are very clear. Inna hadayna hussabila imma shakirun wa imma kafura. That we have guided you, we have shown you the path. Now it's up to you whether you want to give thanks and accept it or reject it. So there's no force. But still, the Abu Jahls and the Abu Sufyans and the Abu Lahabs opposed it and tortured the Prophet and tortured those early Muslims and made life miserably difficult. Does that remind you of something? They tortured them. They savagely sanctioned them. They put embargoes on them. Basically, what we see happening to the Muslims today was exactly what was happening that time. The embargoes, blockades, bombardments. They were bombing the Muslims in other ways. Now they're bombing them with these missiles and these, fighter jets and what have you. The root is the same. The dhalim, the oppressors, are the same. Faces have changed. Era has changed. The principles have remained the same. You understand the difference? And so the Prophet didn't force anybody. There was no concept of jihad. There was none of that. And yet people opposed it. Even when people ask today, and I get a lot of non-Muslims saying, well then, why is there so much negativity about Islam? Why is there so much, negativity in the media? I said the reason is very simple. Islam is a message of truth, and not everybody can bear the truth. Islam does not allow us to remain silent. It challenges the mental status quo that is incorrect. It forces us to think about what we are doing and why we are doing it. It forces us to wake up to the realities of the era that we are living in. And it forces us to do tadabbur and tafakkur. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now opens that chapter in Islam, tells the Prophet, okay, open up, tell the people to believe, tell them to accept the oneness of Allah. It was not easy for them to do that, but more important, it was because these kuffar, the Qurayshis in Makkah, understood one thing, that even today, the disbelievers understand more than we believe and we understand. The disbelievers, the dhalimeen, the oppressors, understand one thing about Islam at that time and even today that we sometimes ourselves have not understood and appreciated. And that is, what is the deep message of Islam? Why is the message of Islam so difficult for them to digest? It is a very simple reason. And it's so simple that sometimes you'll be baffled by it. Islam does not allow us to remain stagnant. It doesn't allow us just to be satisfied with what we have, where we are, what we're doing, and how we are. There is a hadith of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salatu wassalam. One salawat upon Muhammad and Ali. Muhammad, please. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far has been quoted as saying that our true Shia, our true believer, his yesterday will not be the same as his today, and his tomorrow will not be the same as his today. There will be a constant effort and improvement. Sheikh Naim, with your permission, please. There will be a constant effort of improvement and advancement and an enhancement and an increase in one's belief, one's taqwa, one's actions, one's closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam does not allow us to stay stagnant. It reminds us to get out of our comfort zones and to challenge the normal status quo that is around us. So Allah Ta'ala, keeping in mind what I just said a few moments ago, the exaltedness of having children, and especially male children, was something that was ingrained in the minds of the Arabian Peninsula, of the Arabs. It showed social status. It showed the arrogance and the position of every individual. And so they would have more and more children, not caring about how these children were, just having the numbers. And as a result, that was seen as a social status symbol. I've got this many children, you've got that many children, he's got that many children, they've got that many children. And as I was saying earlier, the worst thing you could have was a daughter. Very difficult to bear. And there are countless examples and stories of fathers taking their daughters. Let's go for a walk, sweetheart. Let's go for a walk, my dear daughter. And some kilometers away, some distance away, he had kept a pit ready for her. A very deep hole was dug. And he would take her, let's go, my dear. And basically when they got near there, he would throw her in, cover her up, and kill her alive. Murder her. This was the Arabian Peninsula. This was the era of Jahiliyyah, of ignorance. And everything else was going fine. And nobody would even wonder, where was your daughter? You had a daughter yesterday. Where is she today? Nobody cared. Nobody would ask. There is not one reference in history, and I think our ulama can help correct me, not one reference in history whereby two friends were talking and they would ask each other, so how's your daughter doing? Huh? No reference that I have found in my decades of researching history, which has been one of my favorite subjects. And there would be lots of discussion. How many sons do you have? What does your this son do? What do your 10 sons do? What does your 15 sons do? Oh, he does this. He's going in the business. He's going on trade caravan. He's in Syria. He's in Yemen. He's in this part. He's in the north. He's in the Shimal. He's in the Junub. Well, all these things would take place. Discussions. Never about daughters. That was the status quo. That was the norm. And so when the Prophet came with his message, in addition to the boycotts, the blockades, the various sanctions that they would put on the Prophet, the various attacks that they would make, one of the other attacks, see, the attacks were multi-pronged. And one of those areas of attack in addition to the physical beatings that the Prophet would receive, that's why the Prophet said, what I have gone through, no Nabi from Adam to Isa has gone through. Allahu Akbar. The Prophet himself has been quoted as saying, so you can imagine what Nuh went through, what Ibrahim went through, what Musa went through, what Isa went through. The Prophet is saying their status and suffering was one, my suffering has been greater than theirs. Okay? That was the status quo. So another way they would humiliate the Prophet, oh, you had Qasim, he passed away. You had Ibrahim, he passed away. You had Tahir, he passed away. None of your children survived, Muhammad. You are Abtar. This was a very insulting term. Abtar was a very insulting term in the Arabian Peninsula. It meant that somebody, if you have an animal and you cut off the tail of the animal as a sign of humiliation and disgrace to the animal has no tail. So there's nothing behind him, nothing behind it, and it's walking around without a tail. So a tailless animal was referred to as Abtar. So what they used to say is if somebody didn't have sons, despite having all these marriages and having all these children, none of them had sons, they would call that person Abtar, and they used to use that term against the Holy Prophet of Islam. Oh, Muhammad, you don't have any sons. Your name is not going to remain known to work on the field or on the business. You have a daughter. So the Quran is narrating that they used to call him Abtar. The Quran changed that 180 degrees and it says, Muhammad, don't listen to them. Don't let them humiliate you. Don't let them disgrace you. Don't let those taunts affect you. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. Oh Muhammad, we have given you abundance. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Give praise to your Lord and give sacrifice. Inna. Again, inna is there, huh? We mentioned that. I just told them, Sheikh, before you came, the importance of inna at the beginning and now here. Inna shaniyaka wal. Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. Your enemies will be abtar. Today, when you look around the world, you see countless Sayyids, descendants of the Holy Prophet. You see countless people who are either Musavi, Kadhimi, Ja'fari, Abidi, Bakiri, and you've got Musavi and Radavi, and you've got countless, many of the Maraja who are Sayyids, many of them in the past generation, the current generation are Musavi. What did Allah promise? Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. You will have abundance, O Muhammad. You will have children, O Muhammad, in every corner of the world, in every inhabited continent. And your enemies, inna shaniyaka huwal abtar. Your enemies will be abtar. Find me one Lahabi today. Find me one Sufyani. Yes, before the Dhuhr Imam, or at the time of the Dhuhr Imam, there will be a Sufyani. But out of the whole area, there will be how many that we have found and told about? Abu Sufyan had that arrogance. Abu Lahab had that arrogance. Abu Jahl had. Find me one Jahli. Do you know any? No? You guys have found any? Any Sufyanis other than the one that will come when the Imam comes? Any of these, these Abus who had, had that arrogance and takabbur? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dictated already that this is what we are foreshadowing till the end of time. Whatever your enemies are saying to you, that's what will happen to them. Whatever they are being proud of and having arrogance of, we will turn that around and give it to you, O Muhammad. You are our Habib. And so the one daughter became the shining light of the Holy Prophet's whole mission. The mission of the Prophet surrounded or circled around Fatima Zahra alayha salam. And if you don't want to if you want to try and understand that, when the Ahlul Kisam, when ayat 33 of verse 33 had been revealed in Surah 33, verse 33, at that time, when the Malaika asked Allah, Hum Ahlul Bayt Rasul, Hum Taht al-Kisam, who is under that blanket? Who is with the Prophet? Oh, Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. Allah Ta'ala introduces the Ahlul Kisa to the Malaika. He tells the Malaika that this is the Ahlul Bayt of the Holy Prophet. Who is there? Who is there? The Malaika should have been told by Jalla Jalalu, by Almighty Allah, that it is Muhammad, his daughter, his son-in-law, or his cousin, and his grandchildren. Makes sense? I mean, at the end of the day, Muhammad was the most important, not only prophet of Allah, the most khayri khalqihi, the most important creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Prophet Muhammad should have been the center of the whole attention of Ahlul Kisa. But what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the ayat of إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلُ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Allahumma salli. I'm sure you're all capable of a much stronger salawat than that. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. What does Rabbul Izzat wal Jalal, what does the Almighty Creator, what does the Supreme Creator of the whole world say, of the whole universe say? He says, "Oh Jibreel, oh Malaika, oh my angels, it is the Ahlul Bayt of the Rasul, it is the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet, it is the family members of the closest people, it is for them that the whole universe was created." Who is it? Hum Fatimatu wa abuha wa ba'luha wa banuha. It is Fatima, Fatima's father, Fatima's husband, and Fatima's children. They are in the Ahlul Kisa. And it's interesting, when you see the tafsir of this, and I'm not a mufassir, I'm not a commentator, I only read a few things and share them with you, inshaAllah, bi'idhnillah. And I will just share one thing, that if you look at the Arabic terminology, you find something interesting. It should be, under the Ahlul Kisa, under the blanket, there was, of course, the Holy Prophet. He was ill, he had visited the house. I'm not going to go into the tafsir of everything that had happened in the hadith, so you can read it yourself, you know it, you have it. There was the Prophet who came, he wasn't feeling well, he asked Hazrat Fatima for the blanket. And then Imam Hassan comes. When I'm saying Imam Hassan, but he was just a young child, 4, 5, 6 years old, Takriban. Imam Hussain, young child, he comes in. I'm saying Imam Hussain, but these were just your kids. Then Amirul Mu'mineen comes in. Says, "I smell the fragrance of my grandfather." They all go to the room where the Prophet is lying down. Prophet is not feeling up to par. They all join him under the blanket. Finally, Hazrat Siddiqa goes in, joins under. Now, how many people were under the blanket of Kisa? I need your help for a second, please. You sure, right? No doubts. Yes, my dear. 6. Ah, thank you. Yes, you're right. Who was the 6th one? Thank you. MashaAllah. You got ahead of me there, mashallah. Yes, 6. But at the time when the Malaika were asking, how many were there? 5. And which 5? I want names now, please. I gave it away, yeah. I like to get the audience involved, so yeah, you give me the first one. Give me one name. Prophet Muhammad. On the girl's side, somebody want to give me another name, please? Who else was under the blanket with her, with the Prophet? Prophet Muhammad was there. Let the sisters, I know you're all shy, so yes. Fatima Al-Zahra, okay, that's 2 out of 5. Sisters don't want to answer? Okay, no problem, that's fine. I understand. Okay, you haven't answered. Yes. Imam Ali, so we got 3 out of the 5. Yes, sir. Hassanain, now you gave me 2, so that wasn't fair. Yes, dear sister. Yes, Imam Hussain, Jazakillah, may Allah bless you. And what were you going to say? Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima Al-Zahra, and the leader, the Holy Prophet. Now, all of you speak Arabic at home, or some of you, most of you speak Arabic at home. I want to show of hands, how many of you speak Arabic? So now, you all know Arabic, I don't know Arabic, so I'll ask you to help me out. If I come in and there's one person, a gentleman there, let's say one of the brothers is there, and this one person, I come in, what should I say to him? Assalamu alaykum. Okay. But if I want to be grammatically correct, that there's only one person there, one of the brothers is there, Assalamu alayka wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay. Now if I come in, the whole majma is here, then I would say, as you mentioned, Assalamu alaykum. Now let's say I come in and there's 2 brothers sitting there. And I come in, and if I want to be grammatically correct, I want to show off my Arabic, the little bits, the tads and pieces that I have, I'll say, Assalamu alaykuma. Correct? Scholars are here, sons of scholars are here. If I'm wrong, please do correct me. It is your wajibat and your amr bil ma'ruf and nahi al-munkar. So if I want to be grammatically correct, I would say, Assalamu alaykuma. There's 2 of you, and you will reply, or they will reply, wa alaykas salam, because me is 1. I know I'm big in size, but I still count as only 1 person. So now, when you look at Ahlul Kisa, and you look there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should have said one thing. Na'udhu billah, I'm trying to correct Jalla Jalaluhu. Na'udhu billah, astaghfirullah. Allah Ta'ala could have told the angels, when they asked him who is under the blanket, who is under the kisa, Fatimatu wa abuha wa ba'aluha, instead of banuha, ibnainaha. Because there was how many children of Fatima? How many sons? You sure, right? You've all answered that. Was there any third son of Fatima Zahra in the kisa? So there is a grammatical term for two. Ibnainaha. Because banuha means three or, correct? Three or more. Okay? Not two. Now what does that mean? That means that Allah Ta'ala has made some sort of a challenge here. Remember I said status quo? Remember I said that Islam causes us, forces us, and encourages us to think, to do tadabbur and tafakkur. And the tadabbur and tafakkur towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibnainaha should have been the grammatically correct term to use. But banuha was used, the children of Fatima. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling people till the day of Qiyamah, till the end of time, that in the presence of your eyes, you only see two children of Fatima. You only see Hassan and Hussain. But we are telling you till the day of Qiyamah, every child of Fatima, from Zainul Abidin to Imam Al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu ta'ala, are all under the kisa of Tahiyyat here. Are all under the kisa. They're all there. Your eyes do not envisage them, but they're all there. وَبَنُوهَا. You see that? So it was Fatima alayhi salam who became the epicenter of the Ahlul Kisa. She was the center. Why was she the center? Because she is the only one who had a one-level connection, one-degree connection with everybody who was in the Kisa. If Allah Ta'ala would have used, for example, the Prophet, then you've got the Prophet's daughter, one connection, but the Prophet's son-in-law makes it a two connection. Do you understand connections, relations? It would be the Prophet's daughter's husband. It becomes a two connection. Or his cousin, so his brother's son, his uncle's son. Okay? If it would then, for the Prophet, it would have been his grandchildren, that means his daughter's children, his daughter's sons. No, two connection. If Ali would have been used, alayhi salam, if Amirul Mu'minin would have been used, then Imam Ali, okay, his wife, one connection, his children, one connection, but the Prophet would have had the same issues that we had earlier, two connections. If anybody else would have been used as Hassanain, alayhimus salam, then you would have Hassanain, their mother, their father, but then the Prophet is their mother's father, two connection again. So the only one who would have one connection with everybody who was so purified, who was under the kisa, is none other than Fatima Al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha. She, her father, her husband, and her children. One salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, please. And then you see her own teachings. I know my time is going very, very quickly, and I appreciated your patience. Couple of points and I will wrap it up, inshallah. You will see that when this holy, dignified position was blessed upon her by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you see the noble characteristics and traits that she has. She was known throughout her life by her father and her husband and her children, and even the Imams who came after her, that our grandmother was Siddiqa, the truthful one. She was Tahira, the pure one. She was Mubarakah, the blessed one. She was Ma'asuma, the purified, the infallible one. There were examples, numerous examples from her life that are exemplary to today. One time she was at home. A man comes knocking to the door. One of the companions of the Holy Prophet comes knocking to the door, and the servant is about to open the door, and the servant realizes it's one of the blind companions, a companion who cannot see. She opens the door to welcome him inside so that the Prophet can come and receive him. In the meantime, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam says, wait, let me go get my hijab. Let me go get my covering. The servant tells Hazrat Fatima, O Lady of Light, Ya bint Rasulullah, O daughter of the Holy Prophet, don't worry, you don't need your hijab. I'm paraphrasing. You don't need your hijab. He's blind, he can't see you anyways. And she replies, he can't see me, but I can see him. Yani she explained the whole philosophy of hijab, of tahara hijab, a proper hijab, is not just a head covering. Not just every single hair of yours is covered. It is showing that hijab is a station. And it doesn't only apply to ladies. The most important hijab is for men. And the Lady of Light was showing that, wait a minute, don't just think of hijab to be a head covering that I have to do when somebody can see me. It means that even when I'm looking at somebody, there's a hijab in place. When somebody is looking at me, there's a hijab in place. There has to be a certain veil, not a physical veil, not an actual veil, but a veil in the heart that is looking or seeing things at a point or at a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would want us to see it. Inna as-sam'a wal basara wal fuada kullu ulaika kana anhu mas'ula. Our vision, our hearing, our sight, everything. Kana mas'ula. Allah ta'ala will question it. Hazrat Zahra explained that. There would be numerous times people would come at odd hours of the day and night. Ladies would come and ask Fatima Zahra alayhi salam questions. And when they would apologize, you know what the akhlaq of the Lady of Light was? When they would apologize, we are sorry for bothering you, we are sorry for so many questions, we are sorry for troubling you at this hour. She would say that you're not troubling me, you're not bothering me. You're lifting the burden of weight off my shoulders. You're doing that. You know, sometimes we get upset when people call me at late hours or early in the morning. I might get upset. I might say, why are you calling me now? I'm not even half awake yet. I'm not this, I'm half asleep now. Hazrat Zahra tells them, you have taken burdens off my shoulders. Her patience was exemplary. Inshallah, in our discussion tomorrow and Sunday when we have our last few, we'll talk about in her life, when she took some of the stands that she did. Why did she take them? For what reason? Was it just going after a piece of property? Is that what it was all about? Fadak and its challenges? Inshallah, that's our discussion tomorrow. Or was there something more deep-rooted? And that is why when the Shahada of Hazrat Zahra, when the Shahada of Hazrat Fatima took place, it was after great torture and great difficulties that she had to bear. The writers who have written about the Shahada of Hazrat Fatima, those who have been honest, have written in such ways that if you read the last few months or weeks of the life of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, you will not but be able to shed tears and see that at the young age of 18, this is what the Lady of Light went through. The same lady for whom the Prophet of Islam would get up from his seat and welcome her. The same lady who the Malaika would come and take the permission of. When the Prophet himself was on his deathbed, a knock comes at the door of Fatima Zahra. Hazrat Fatima goes to the door and says, please don't come now, my father is not well. My father is not well. A little while later, the knock comes again. Again she says, please come back at another time. Finally, when the Prophet is observing this scene in the most difficult state that he was in, he says, Fatima, please open the door. She says, Ya Rasulullah, you're not in a state where you can handle any companions or handle a discussion. Look at the state that you are in. Ya Rasulullah, you're in such difficulty. The Prophet tells her, Fatima Zahra, that is not a companion who's at the door. That is not a companion who's knocking at the door. That is the angel of death. Even the angel of death will take the permission of Fatima Zahra before entering the house of Fatima Zahra. This was the Lady of Light. This was the Lady Fatima Zahra, whose door was thrown upon her, whose house was burned down, and the house door was thrown on her in such a way, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, that the door, when it was crushed upon her, when it was flung upon her, it injured her in such a way that her rib cage was broken. Her rib cage was broken, and the baby, Hussain, who she was carrying in her womb, was killed at that time. Some of the writers and medical experts have written that the bones of Fatima Zahra were broken in such a way that every breath she took from the time that the door was flung upon her, from the time that the door was was thrown upon her till the time she left this world. Every single breath that Fatima Zahra took would have been a breath of difficulty. A breath that would have been challenging. And so when Hassan and Hussain saw their mother in this state, they were crying. And the last thing Fatima Zahra does before she leaves this world, she bathes Hassan and Hussain. She comforts Zainab and Kulthum. She feeds them with her own hand as if she's getting them ready for a life to be undertaken without their mother's love, without their mother's care. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Oh Allah, accept this ibadat from us. Forgive her tawfiq, forgive our sins and our shortcomings, Ya Allah. We ask you to accept this as a condolence to our awaited Imam, Imam Al-Hujjah, and to the family of the Holy Prophet, as our condolences as we are marking the Ayyam al-Shahada of Fatima Zahra. Ya Allah, let us act on the teachings of the Quran and Majid and the Ahlul Bayt. Ya Allah, those who are ill, grant them shifa kamila from their illnesses. Those who are suffering oppression, dhulam, tyranny, Ya Allah, grant the resistance and the mustadhafeen a speedy victory. Hasten the downfall of all the oppressors wherever they are, in whatever shape they are. Ya Allah, we ask you to protect our ulama, our maraja, the wali, faqih, those who are serving while the Imam is in occultation. Grant them a long and healthy life in the service of Islam and Ahlul Bayt. Ya Allah, we ask you, بحق هذا شهر جمادي الثاني, for the sake of this month that has just now befallen upon us, we ask you, Ya Allah, to hasten the return of our awaited Imam Al-Hujjah. Make us amongst the ashab and the ansar of the Imam. Let us see the zamana dhuhur with our own eyes. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. If I can ask you to recite one Surah Fatiha for all of the shuhada, for all of the marhumin, especially those who are suffering in Palestine and in other places throughout the world, and precede that with one salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.